All right, we're live. Hey guys, welcome to Atlanta's newest homeowner live stream. This is a community dedicated to helping as many people as we can achieve the dream of homeownership. So this may not be for you, but do you want to buy your first home, but you're not sure if you can afford it, or maybe you're not sure where to begin, or maybe as Halloween is approaching, you'd like to say goodbye to that creepy landlord for good? So I want you to imagine getting handed the keys to your very own home, opening that door to a new chapter in your life as Atlanta's newest homeowner, because that's what we're about. So, hey guys, my name is Matt Martin. I'm a realtor in the Atlanta area. And every week, I'm going to have a special guest interview to help first-time homebuyers achieve the dream of home ownership. And it seems like it's only getting harder as home prices have risen, interest rates have risen, but home ownership is the bedrock of the American dream. And it's really the first step on the path to building wealth for you and your family. So some of the ways we aim to help is by lowering the barriers to entry, by giving you the knowledge, the systems, and the relationships you need to succeed. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. All right, so in this episode, we'll talk about an overlooked aspect of home buying, which is home insurance. So I'm joined today by Brad Golder with Provision Insurance, and he helps people ensure that they get the best insurance coverage for their new home. So welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Matt. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So Brad is a native Atlanta, grew up in Marietta. Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. I did. I grew up in Marietta, went to Wheeler High, and then went to Vanderbilt University. I moved to Michigan, chasing the dream of being a sports broadcaster. But while I was up there, I met my wife and got into insurance, went a completely different route in my career after doing the baseball broadcasting. So my wife, Kate, is in university administration. We moved down here about Memorial Day. And she is with Kennesaw State. We have two great kids, Gibson, who's 3, and Grace, who's 1.5. We live in the West Cobb area, just purchased out there, it's Powder Springs address, Hillgrove High School area. So we're excited to be back in the Atlanta area in Cobb County, and I'm excited to be back home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, welcome. At one of these days, I'm gonna have to watch a Braves game with you, and we'll just turn off the sound, and you can help me with a play-by-play. Well, good. Well, Brad, since this is a show for first-time home buyers, I'd love to hear about the first home you purchased, where and when, what you loved about it, and what it's meant for your family.
Yeah. So my wife and I bought our first home in Rochester, Michigan. It was for us, we had been renting, we had a nice condo in it's kind of a downtown Rochester area where not a lot of nice shops and restaurants. And we had a nice condo that we rented, and we could walk to the downtown area. But we knew we wanted to start a family, and we knew we wanted to have ownership of our own. We shopped probably about a year to really get to know the market, because we knew that we had a good renting situation that we could fall back on. And by looking for a long period of time, we were really able to know the market. And so we knew when a value popped up. And so we jumped on it and bought the house that we thought was going to be our forever house. And different things happened that we didn't end up staying in Michigan, but we lived in that house for 5 years. We welcomed our first 2 kids in that house, and it was really the perfect place for us to raise a family. And if career things had stayed the same, we probably would have seen both kids graduate from high school up there and made it our forever home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know people love looking at the pictures and, pictures of beautiful homes. But really, I think what makes homes pretty amazing is the life that's lived in them. Those memories of bringing your child home for the first time. That's super exciting. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that with me. So let's talk about home insurance. So first-time homebuyers, you may not be aware that a mortgage company is not going to give you a loan to buy your first home unless you also have a home insurance policy for that home. So during the home buying process, you're going to need an insurance agent on your team. So you'll hear me talk about the real estate team, and that includes your realtor, your lender, your home inspector, and also your insurance agent. So Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit, what a first-time home buyer should know about home insurance, about the process, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. And if you want to show that first slide too, I can kind of walk through that a little bit. But so, you are a first-time home buyer. You found this house of your dreams. Do you have the first slide?
Sorry. Yeah.
That's the last one. Yeah. So you need to find home insurance. So my recommendation is an independent agent. The difference between an independent and a captive agent is that a independent agent is not bound to one particular company. A captive agent is. So a captive agent can only sell you that brand of insurance. An independent agent can shop the market, find you the best deals price-wise, but then also find you the best coverage. It's important to be with a reputable company. So 2 ways I would gauge whether an insurance company is reputable is number one, there's a company called AM Best, Alpha Mary Best, and AM Best is an independent rater of insurance companies. So you can create a free account on AM Best and see, all the companies across the board, how they rate. The second thing I would do is talk to people in the home services business that rely on getting paid from insurance companies, roofers, contractors, mold remediation, water remediation. Typically people have home claims. Those companies need to get paid. Who are the companies that are not paying out? What companies are they having trouble collecting money from? Because those are the companies that are going to give you the biggest problem when you need home insurance. There is one particular company that's a national brand that I've asked roofers, just probably 6 roofers in the last 6 months, who are the companies that don't pay. And there was one company that stood out. Every roofer said there were a couple of companies that were mentioned a couple of times, but and I won't bash a particular company here, but you do the research yourself. Find out if you know a good roofer. Find out who do they not want to see on somebody's home insurance, because that's not a company that you should go through. I also recommend when you find the house that you want, get an insurance quote early. The advantage to that is in the insurance industry, we run what's known as a clue report, which is going to show the past history in the last 5 years of that house from an insurance standpoint. And your realtor or the seller's realtor will provide to your realtor the disclosure form. Okay. And the disclosure is what the seller knows is wrong with the house. And sometimes sellers lie, and sometimes they don't know. They've only owned the house for a year or two. They don't know. They inherited the home from mom and dad, and they don't know the history of the house. The clue report will tell you, what's going on. So you found this house, you love it, you think that there's nothing wrong with it, and then the clue report will show that they've had 3 water claims in the past 5 years. That's kind of a red flag that you may have some problems with this house. And this may be a house that you want to back out of. So getting that clue report ordered early is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to piggyback on that, because that is an important part of due diligence. So at the point when you're trying to investigate and inspect the house, so there's this seller's disclosure report that you'll get from the sellers, which they're supposed to disclose important things like, have there been water intrusions in the basement? Have there been leaks and things like that? And so if your insurance agent gives you that clue report and says, hey, they've had 3 water claims, in the past few years, and that wasn't disclosed on the seller's disclosure, you know that you're dealing with another party who's not being honest, right? And so that should be a huge red flag for you when purchasing that home, because who knows what else they're not disclosing or being honest about. Right?
Exactly. So, a lot of times I ask for the mortgage person's information, and I like to send them the insurance estimate. The mortgage person, whoever you're working with, is putting together numbers as to what all the total costs are going to be based on taxes and the insurance costs. So I like to show to the mortgage person what that is going to be. Most first-time home buyers escrow their insurance payments, which just means that the mortgage company is making the payments on your behalf, which is a pretty easy process from an insurance standpoint, because we just send the bill to the mortgage company and the mortgage company pays it. It's a really easy way to do it. And actually, one of the nice things about doing escrow payments is you, as the homeowner, get the benefit of paying monthly, because you're paying monthly through your escrow. But you're getting if the insurance company offers a paid in full discount, you're getting that because the mortgage company is paying in full on your behalf.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, when you pay your mortgage company is actually going to pay two things for you. One, that's your property taxes, and two, your insurance, because the mortgage company wants to make sure that those two things are taken care of, because that would reduce their claim on the home. So those fees will be collected in advance. The mortgage company, they pay the money, but you're the one who's paying it up front. So those are what's known as prepaids when you close on the home. So there's your down payment, cost to close, and there'll be some prepaids that they collect in advance to pay for your home insurance and things like that.
Yep. So Matt, next I wanted to talk about what you get when you get a homeowner's policy. So these are the 5 coverages that should be included in your homeowner's insurance. So when you need to make a claim, it's going to be based on these coverages. So the most important, I would say, is the dwelling coverage. So that covers your building. You've got a home, the dwelling coverage covers that. This is written as a replacement cost. So the insurance company is going to come up with what does it cost to replace that home. So you've got a 1972 built house. They have to replace it with a 2022 build house, or at this point, maybe a 2023 build house. So you are getting, in the event of a loss, your house catches on fire, burns to the ground, you are getting a brand new home. You're getting a replacement cost home. But everything else should be about the same. You should, you buy insurance, and they are going to replace it with a very similar home to what you had. So you want to make sure that there's enough coverage in the dwelling to completely replace your home. Most of the time, I have people come back and say that number is way too high. And I say, that's fine. It's much better to be too high than too low. And there are so many hidden costs with rebuilding a home in an insurance loss. Think about it. Maybe your house was built in a neighborhood of 100 houses. Okay. Well, you can't do that. You're not getting the bulk discount of 100 houses at once. You're getting somebody having to draw up the plans and build a one-off house, which means higher cost of materials and labor in a market in which materials and labor are already through the roof expensive. Plus, if you have a total loss, you may have debris removal that's going to have to be included in all of that. And then an expedited timeline, because you are homeless. If you have a total loss of a house, we've got to quickly build this house. So an expedited timeline is also going to increase the dwelling coverage. So, typically in this market, I would say you buy a house for $300,000. Your dwelling coverage may be $500,000. It may be that much more than what the market value is of the home. Some of the other things you're getting as far as coverage, you're covering the detached structures. That's typically 10% of the cost of the house. So $300,000 dwelling coverage would be a $30,000 detached structure. This is going to be your detached garages, barns. You can typically increase it if you have maybe a significant barn or similar type structure on your property, maybe a detached garage with an in-law suite. But typically that's going to be 10%. Some houses don't even need detached structures, but it's normally included in the package. You're going to get coverage for your personal property. Typically this is a lot of little things in your house. This is all your furniture, all your kitchenware, all your lawn care stuff in the garage, your clothes, everything that's in your house, electronics. It really adds up. So this is typically covered at least 50% of the dwelling. You're going to get additional expenses. So if you have a total loss and your house is not habitable, that's going to be temporary housing for short-term hotel or long-term either condo or rental house. And then I think an overlooked one that I think is important is liability. If you are sued, you've got coverage. I would max that out at either $500,000. I've seen $1 million on liability. But I think just in general in your life, you are now owning a house. You have assets. Every time you make a payment to your mortgage, you own a little bit more of your house. You may have bank accounts. You may have other assets. It's important to protect those in case you are sued. Things can go wrong at your house when other people are visiting. Make sure you have enough liability on your home insurance. Make sure you have enough liability on your auto insurance. And I can talk on the next slide. I'll talk a little bit more about ways that you can increase that liability if you don't think that the standard liability is enough. Okay, so that's kind of what you get with a homeowner's insurance policy. Here's what you don't get. And some of this stuff it's just not at home insurance. And then some of this stuff, I'll talk about how you can add it on, but things that you may want to make sure that your agent is adding on to the policy. These are the add-ons in the end that are going to maybe make a good home insurance policy more expensive than just a quick .com home insurance policy that doesn't have some of these things that you may need. Big thing is water and sewer backup. So if water is getting into your house through the backup of the sewer lines into your house, that is not covered on the main policy. You need to add that coverage. This is typically when you have water in the basement. I would say if you've got a unfinished basement, $10,000 would be a good amount. If you have a nice finished basement, that number could be 25, 50,000, even 100,000. If you've got a really nice basement that you're going to want to have that amount of coverage for water backing up into the basement. This was a slide that was originally produced for the state of Michigan, but it holds true in Georgia. Water backup is the biggest claim, the most likely claim to happen to you in the state of Georgia. So make sure that you have a good coverage there for water backup.
Yeah, let me just jump in just to explain that for somebody who wouldn't know. So I live in a 1964 ranch, so it's all one level, and it had original cast iron pipes and sewer running to the road, to the city sewer system. So over time, that pipe, cast iron pipe, the lifetime of it is only about 50 years. But trees and bushes and all those roots start to grow in, and they crack the pipe and they start getting into the pipe. So eventually you get these blockages, and usually it's like when you're running your washing machine or things like that, water will back up into the lowest point of the home. It could be your tub, right, or a place in the basement, and it can cause big damages. And I actually didn't know that wasn't covered under normal insurance policies. So that's really good information.
So a good agent's going to add that on, I think, at minimum 10,000. But you want to make sure that is getting added. I'm gonna jump ahead here because we're talking about it. The second to last one is service line, utility line coverage, because you were kind of talking about some of the roots and stuff and how the lines can become corrupted going into the house. So the water backup covers the water that goes into the house because of that. But if you need to repair the lines that are going into the house, they're on your property, but home insurance stops at the structure of the house. So even though it's on your property, the lines are not covered. So companies, this is a relatively new coverage. I feel like companies are adding it within the last 5 or 10 years. Having utility and service line coverage, and that covers the pipes that are going, let's say, from your house to the street. If you need to get in there and tear up your yard and repair those lines, I believe you own those lines, so you're responsible for them, but the insurance doesn't cover them unless you add the service line coverage. But I think once they're on your property, you as the homeowner own them, even though they're part of a public utility.
Right. Yeah, you're responsible for it.
You can have service line coverage, $10,000 or $20,000. If somebody needs to really tear up your yard and get to those lines, that's a good coverage to have as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, obviously, if you're looking at buying an older home, that would be a big reason to do a sewer scope. So that's something you can do during due diligence, is have a plumber come out and inspect the line for that. So that's really helpful advice. Now, it could be $7,000 to $10,000 to replace your sewer line from the house to the street. And in my neighborhood, that's a big issue, and I can tell when it's been replaced because they'll have the nice newer sewer cleanouts. But I feel like once a month driving around my neighborhood, there's like a new neighbor who's having their yard dug up and installing a new sewer line. So it's just one of those things with older homes. It's just going to have to be done sooner or later.
So I'm going to keep jumping around here because we're talking about water. I'm going to go to flood.
Okay.
Flood is not covered on a homeowner's insurance policy. So let's go recent news. Hurricane hits Fort Myers. And you've got a house that was just destroyed by the hurricane and the flood. Let's say the house, the hurricane tore off the roof. There's major damage to the upstairs because of the rain getting into the upstairs, and now they need a new roof. But on the lower level, the house is underwater, and there's major damage to the main level from the flood. So in this situation, the part that was damaged due to the storm winds, the roof damage, is going to be covered by home insurance. But the part of that house that was damaged by the flood is not going to be covered by home insurance. It's going to be covered by flood insurance. So this person would have needed a flood insurance policy. Flood insurance prices are regulated by FEMA, so by the federal government, but agents can sell the FEMA product. If you are in a flood zone, and there are some flood zones in Metro Atlanta, if you're in a flood zone, you are required to have flood insurance per your mortgage. The only time you wouldn't be required to have flood insurance is if you paid cash. But if you're in a flood zone, you really should have flood insurance. You can have flood waters, though, even if you're not in a flood zone. Flood zones are really more of a recommendation. So if you feel like maybe you're close enough to a river, lake, creek that could have experienced rising waters, if you feel like the home doesn't sit up very high and could be susceptible to flood waters, a flood insurance policy is always a good bet there. That is not part of home insurance. It's a separate policy, but that is a good policy to have if you are concerned about rising water in your area.
Awesome.
So a couple other things I want to talk about. I talked about how, I think you should have high liability if you have assets to protect those assets. And you want to make sure that you increase your liability and your underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage on your auto insurance, because that all ties together in protecting your assets. Um, but if you feel like you need $1 million or more in liability coverage, the way you add additional liability coverage is through an umbrella policy. They are not expensive, a few $100s a year for a couple. If you've got young kids, or especially driving age kids, maybe a little bit more for an umbrella policy, but still a good coverage there to have to make sure that you are protecting your assets. Especially important if you have, good bank accounts, own a good percentage of your home. Very important to have umbrella coverage.
Right. And examples of that liability could be your dog getting out and biting a neighbor, right? And that neighbor suing you. We have a trampoline, so a neighbor's child coming over and, God forbid, falling and getting hurt. Right. So there are definitely instances where you don't have to be doing anything, egregious, but you could, find yourself getting sued. And for most people, that most of their wealth is the home they live in, right? So the umbrella policy would protect you and your home in case a bad thing happens, right?
We live in a litigious society. Watch daytime TV, one call, that's all. I mean, there are hundreds of TV attorneys out there that are ready to. Their operators are standing by to take your case
Right.
if you have been wronged by somebody else. So it is much better off to allow, if there is a level of fault on your behalf, it's much better to let an insurance company pay those damages than have to pay it out of your 401k.
Right. Absolutely.
So I talked about personal property is covered on home insurance, but I want you to pay special attention if you have appreciable items, collectibles, jewelry, guns, other valuables. You're going to want to schedule those items. Let's say you have a $15,000 engagement ring. Add that as a scheduled item. That's going to give you coverage outside the home as well. It's going to give you coverage for anything, including mysterious disappearance. So lost, stolen, broken, anything like that happens to that piece of jewelry is going to be covered at full replacement value. So schedule items like that. Any collectibles, art, and stuff like that has a collectible value. I have on here mortgage protection. So once you buy your home, you're going to get a lot of offers from companies offering mortgage protection. So protecting your mortgage is a good thing. The mortgage protection oftentimes looks out for the mortgage company and make sure they get paid. People do those policies, and they basically are a term life policy. If the homeowner dies, the mortgage would be paid off. But it also means that the policy decreases in value because you owe less as time goes by to your mortgage. Those mortgage policies typically decline in value over the years. The best way to really protect yourself and your family is a term life policy. So let's say you and your spouse are going in on a home together. It's a $500,000 home. Getting a $500,000 term life insurance, or even $1 million, would be a great way to protect each other in the event of one of you passing before the mortgage comes due. So many times couples don't have that, and all of a sudden they have to sell their dream home when one passes because they've lost 50% of the income, and there's no way they can afford that house. So having a term life policy is going to keep your family in a more stable position in the event of an unexpected death. So especially if you're young and healthy, for first-time home buyers, you can get a 30-year term life policy for very little money. and it would protect the mortgage. And if one of you passes, it really protects the family too, especially if you have a policy that's above the mortgage. The surviving spouse maybe doesn't have to go back to work right away, or doesn't have to, or can afford daycare and some of the different expenses that are going to happen in the increased daycare in the event of one of you passing away. So protecting the mortgage is definitely important. And instead of doing one of these policies that the mortgage company will try to sell you on, I recommend a term policy, to get a term life policy from a reputable life insurance company.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, but I have two more questions for you, Brad. Okay. One, what are just the most common, insurance claims that you see from homeowners?
Insurance claims?
Mm-hmm.
Water all day long. So water backup in the basement is the most common. Water in the roof, coming in from the roof. And that really brings me to, I think, an important point. One of the biggest things that homeowners can do is maintain their home. Do regular maintenance of your home. Home insurance doesn't cover wear and tear. If your roof is old, it needs to be replaced. So just because water is getting in, if your roof is damaged by wear and tear and not by storm, that is not covered. I would recommend anytime you have a pretty bad storm come through, walk the house, assess it. If you think your roof is getting older, if maybe the home inspection came back and said, your roof has maybe 5 years left, have a roofer come out after the storm, look over it. Does it need to be replaced? Is there any seepage coming in? Because one of the most common denials in home insurance is mold. Mold comes in through the roof. If it's seeping in on a long-term basis, that's not covered. You've got to get to the water right away, and then make a claim. So if the water comes in on a storm and you notice it right away, you can make that claim. But if the water comes into the house, even if it's because of a storm, and 3 years later there's mold, that's not going to be covered. So doing regular maintenance of your house is going to really prevent major issues.
Right. We had a water heater expansion tank explode. I mean, it didn't like explode fire-wise, but like it erupted and shot water all over our utility closet, flooded our kitchen, and that was a big disaster for us. That interrupted life for a fair amount while we
would imagine
that repaired. So water is a super destructive force in homes. Obviously, fire is the most destructive, but water causes a lot of problems. All right, okay, Brad. I want my last question. What's the weirdest claim you've ever heard of or seen?
I can't think of a weird one in home insurance.
Okay, I was putting you on the spot, but I'm sure there's.
I mean, in my role, I don't deal with the claims as much as well. I will tell you that in auto insurance, one of my company's clients allegedly hit someone in a parking lot. She was on a motorized wheelchair. I mean, it was pretty sad. But she hit the side of the car, and somehow it went through the court system, and he was found at fault.
So the motorized scooter ran into their car.
I mean, it was on the side. I don't know how unless he was driving sideways, there's no way he hit her.
Right.
But I think it goes to show too how it really doesn't matter whether you're at fault. A judge and jury think you're at fault. And it's, again, why you should have good liability insurance is that, you can't really trust 12 of your peers to good decisions, because he was found at fault. He had good liability insurance. But yeah, that was a bizarre case that went against one of our clients.
Wow. Yeah. All right. And that's also a good advertisement too, that you not only help people find good home insurance, but you also help them with their auto insurance as well.
Yes. And when it comes to shopping for home insurance, always have your agent look at auto insurance. It's probably a 20% discount for most companies on both policies. So most situations, packaging auto and home insurance is going to be your best bet. And also tell your agent about any organizations or groups, maybe employer groups that you're involved in. Some companies give special discounts for engineers, or based on an alumni association, or where you do your banking. So tell them everything, and maybe maybe the company that they're shopping for is going to have good discounts based on some of those things.
All right, that's awesome. Well, Brad, thank you so much for joining me. You've been very knowledgeable. It's been very helpful. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or reach out to you?
Sure. Give me a call anytime, 770-783-2150. I've got an email address, bgolder@provisionagency.com, bgolder@provisionagency.com. And then I know you've got some of my information too on a flyer. So if some of your clients are looking for home insurance, just ask Matt. Matt can pass along my flyer. It's got my contact information, and it's got a lot of the information we talked about today on that flyer.
Absolutely. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'll leave some more information in the show notes, but you can always direct message me or leave a comment that you'd like me to reach out to you. So happy to pass Brad's information along. Well, Brad, thanks so much for joining me, and thank you to our audience for joining our first ever Atlanta's newest homeowner live stream. We plan to bring you a lot more helpful interviews like this to help demystify and lower the barriers to entry in buying your first home. So thanks again, Brad, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Matt.